African perspective, and we've been exploring this question about this new scramble for Africa as it's being described. And just before the break, my guest Victor Kgomoeswana was saying that actually the biggest threat is not these superpowers that are coming in, but us ourselves. Well, let's look at the continent now and some of the things that we could be doing and not doing. But every week I hear about a new initiative. So we have the Agenda 2063 and more recently this free trade agreement that was signed across the continent. Isn't that what the game is about?
Yeah, it should be about it. But you see, there's the difference between... Okay, let me explain. When you got to go back to your reflexes, your instincts. There's something called biomimicry. Which forces business leaders and managers to look to nature to understand how to organize themselves better. So architects are beginning to look at ant hills to find ways of making their buildings a lot more naturally able to cool themselves, because that's those ant hills that you see, they can grow very high. They don't have air conditioning. And the bees, how they organize them, and the spiders, how they spin their web and make it so resistant, so tough. So the point I'm trying to make is, often, if you just look at ants, once they are up, they are working. And most of all, they are working together. They do boring stuff. Pick a grain of soil and take it all the way into, and then they come back the same route. But they are there, they are at it. They don't sit and, you've never seen bees sit down and write an Agenda 2063 about how to build a beehive. We know how to trade with one another. We know it, Peter. We know how to give visa-free entry to visitors. Rwanda has it. If you have a valid passport from anywhere in the world, you get to Rwanda, they charge you $30 to get your visa on arrival. That's $30 for revenue for them for nothing. We know how to do business with one another. Let's just do it. We know how to buy from black-owned suppliers so that we can boost the inclusion of black people who are 90% of this country. We know who those black entrepreneurs are. We know how to do it. We don't need to sit down and write. President Ramaphosa doesn't need an advisory council. He knows he needs people who can do the job, and he holds them accountable. And every day he gets up and says, tell me how far you are, what you need for me to help you.
So then why is it that I am buying coffee from Europe that's been grown in Côte d'Ivoire?
Yeah, we're too captured up here. We believe something exotic has more value than something local. That's number one. That's our values. Our values are messed up. Number two, we are not organized for power. So we understand what's wrong. We know what we need to do, but we don't invest enough in creating institutions that will make us effective and powerful. Number three, we're just not united enough. As I said, we're still happy to call each other names and say, oh, they're from... And some of these structures don't mean anything. So I would rather we just said, hey, on any level, do it. Measure how much business you're doing with your neighbors and hold one another. But we are too happy to get custom duties because we think that's money.
I'm seeing images of leaders of the African Union and, you know, again, intelligent people who know what to do. You can see what's happening next door. How is it that the SADC community, we won't even go the rest of the continent, how is it that SADC can allow Zimbabwe to get to levels of 900% inflation?
Because we are still stuck on this false sovereignty that Kwame Nkrumah warned us 1963 against, that you don't just become sovereign and independent because you call yourself sovereign. You become sovereign and independent because you are really sovereign and independent. Most of the states of Africa are not really sovereign states. They shouldn't even be allowed to be sovereign states because they don't have any substance. They don't have any value. They're meaningless, right? They're just in name sovereign states. But because we respect that so much, remember what I said, these borders were created in Germany in 1884-85. But we respect them so much that if we can't cross into Zimbabwe and tell them what to do. They're a sovereign state. But wait a minute, the mess they are making is creating problems for all of us. So if nothing else, let's get involved to solve the mess that they are creating. No, we're going to hold back because sovereign states can't be tampered with. That's being timid, man. Timid people don't achieve anything.
Do we have a bit of an inferiority complex? Because when Davos happens, all our heads of state disappear and they go there. When the FOCAC happens, 90% of the continent's leaders were in China.
Yeah, we have an inferiority complex. We like to say, I'm out of the country. It sounds like something prestigious. I'm out of the country. Imagine a man, a grown man, being happy to say, I'm away from home. And what does that tell you? You're proud that you're away from home? Who's raising your children? So we like that. And that's the inferiority that I'm talking about. We think when we are away from home, we must be doing something phenomenal. When we are here, no, we are local. So that's the inferiority complex. But don't forget, if you watch 12 Years a Slave, what did the guy do? He was free, supposedly. They captured him. They put him in a small room, and they came and said, you are a slave now, boy. He said, no, I'm a free man. They beat him up until he said, I am a slave. That's what happened to Africans, man. We were so beaten into believing that we are nothing until somebody else, European, tells us otherwise. That even when we look at ourselves in the mirror and see, hey, we are free, the beating that we suffered makes us believe we are not really free. And that's why we will jump when the Commonwealth has a meeting. Queen Elizabeth is speaking. When China calls, we will jump. But when our own call, no, we're not going to be excited.
All right, so how do we start a defense strategy against this new scramble for Africa? What is the strategy to say, guys, these eagles are flying around? Where does it start? How do we start the process of defending our borders and defending our land and our minerals?
I can't say I have all the answers, but at least it starts with admitting that we have a messed up system here and it's not working. Let's admit. These men in suits that you see right now, pretending they are powerful, that they are running economies, maybe they should start being a lot more honest about them. They are indebted to China, to America, to the UK, so they should admit that we are weak. And our real strength comes from uniting with one another. And maybe that Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement will start looking like the muscle that it can give us. Because it can, Peter, if we start really trading with one another, we can become stronger. But let's admit that we are weak at the moment. And when I see some of these people, they really like to believe they are powerful. And maybe because there are too many men there. Men like when they are feeling small to look bigger than they really are. So maybe we need more women in the African Union. They might be able to admit women aren't going to let their children starve just so they can look powerful.
So I don't know how many African summits I've been to. The issues of visas has come up over and over again. You hear people say that it's easier actually for me to go to Europe than it is to go to another African state. We know this. Why isn't there the will to fix it?
But that's my point. I'm saying to you, the false sovereignty, the belief that we are really sovereign when we know we are not. I'll give you an example. Paul Kagame likes to tell Rwandan people that remember your country, when you spell your country, it starts with a P. They say, what do you mean it starts with a P? It starts with an R. It says it doesn't matter how successful you are as Rwanda, you are still poor Rwanda.
Right.
So he's trying to say to them, don't get carried away by what you are told you are achieving, because deep down you know you are just a successful poor country. So the poor will remain until you are really a big player. So let's admit that we are not where we should be. Let's admit that our strength rests in us working together and unifying our markets, because 1.2 billion is a lot of people if we find a way. Let's start digging up and finding our own industrialists, and they're there, by the way, Pete. We have Yekani Technologies in the Eastern Cape. I want to know whether the South African government, President Ramaphosa has said, I want to see what percentage of your tablets you are buying from this company in the Eastern Cape.
All right.
Rather than everybody trying to show off their latest iPhone, what is it? whatever you call it,
Yeah.
I don't know. But again, we think exotic must be better quality.
All right. So, as a last word, we know that the new scramble for Africa has been underway for some time.
Yeah.
I'm just asking you now. You're at the African Union. You're addressing the heads of state. In 30 seconds, what do you tell them?
We are weak apart. We need a plan that works. We need to act. We know what's wrong. We know what needs fixing. Let's do it, and let's hold one another accountable, and let's stay united.
Victor Kgomoeswana, thanks very much indeed. I'm going to clear your visa to get to Ethiopia, so you can tell them that. Sadly, that's all we have time for in African Perspective tonight. Thanks so much indeed for tuning in. But before we go, today marks Uganda's independence.